Did you know some Mercedes owners are still cruising past 500,000 miles on the original engine? Most people assume a Mercedes is basically a fancy toy that self-destructs the moment the warranty ends. That is a myth the dealership loves you believing. Today we reveal 13 habits that keep these engines running practically forever. We will also expose a shop trick quietly killing transmissions early. Stick around for a bonus habit near the end that could save thousands. Let's kick things off with habit number 13. Number 13, the oil change shortcut that secretly starves your engine dealerships. Love pushing that 15,000-mile extended oil change interval on Mercedes engines. Sounds convenient, right? Wrong. It is also how they guarantee you back in their service bay for a sludge cleanout at 90,000 miles. Real longevity owners ignore that number completely. They run full synthetic and change it every 5,000 to 7,000 miles. They do this no matter what the dashboard says. Take Daniel, a mechanic in Ohio. He has personally logged 4 Mercedes engines past 400,000 miles. Every single one got oil changes on the short interval. They never used the long one. Meanwhile, his shop sees the extended interval cars roll in with sludge. The buildup is so thick it looks like tar. One customer's engine was practically cemented shut. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The dealership makes more money selling you a rebuilt engine at 100,000 miles. They make far less selling you extra oil changes. A $90 oil change every 6 months is nothing. Compare that to an $8,000 engine job. Guess which one keeps their service bay lights on? Nobody at the counter is going to volunteer that information. Volunteering it works directly against their own bottom line. The fix is stupidly simple. Change your oil twice as often as the manual suggests. That is it. Use full synthetic every single time, never a blend. Mercedes engines run tighter tolerances than most economy cars. They simply cannot tolerate cheap lubrication over long stretches. $5,000 of prevention or $8,000 of steam under the hood. That is the math nobody at the dealership wants you doing. But oil is only half the battle. The next habit involves a tiny sensor that dealerships would rather you never learn about. Once you learn about it, you will never pay for this service again. If you're still here, subscribe now, so work if you want more habits like this one. Why? Because habit number 12 gets a lot more personal. Number 12, the transmission. Fluid lie that voids your lifetime growth. Claim Mercedes once marketed certain transmissions as lifetime fluid. This meant you would supposedly never need to change it. That claim has quietly disappeared from most owners' manuals, and for good reason. Transmission fluid breaks down around 60,000 miles. This happens no matter what any sticker under the hood tells you. Camille, a mother of 2 in Phoenix, trusted that lifetime label completely. Her ML350 hit 90,000 miles with the original fluid still inside. The transmission started slipping on the highway. This happened right as she was merging with 2 kids buckled in the back seat. The eventual rebuild cost her $4,200. A simple fluid and filter service would have run her about $250. Why would a manufacturer or dealer let that lifetime myth slide for so long? A transmission failure after warranty is not their problem financially. It is entirely yours. A flush that costs $250 barely moves the needle on their profit sheet. A $4,000 rebuild absolutely does. Somebody in that service department knows exactly which number they want to see. The real habit is simple. Flush that transmission every 50,000 miles, regardless of what any sticker claims. Use the manufacturer-specified fluid, not a generic substitute. Mercedes transmissions are notoriously picky. The wrong fluid can cause shifting problems almost identical to old degraded fluid. This tricks owners into thinking the flush did nothing. $250 now, or $4,200 later. That is the actual lifetime cost of believing a marketing label. Speaking of things dealerships conveniently forget to mention, some habits give you 0 warning before it takes your engine down with it, and by the time you hear anything at all, the damage is usually already done. One of those many habits comes next in number 11 and involves a part that fails silently. Number 11, the timing chain. Tensioner that fails without a single warning. Light older Mercedes 4-cylinder engines have a nasty reputation for timing chain tensioner failure. The terrifying part is there is usually no warning light at all. One moment everything sounds normal. The next moment you hear a rattling noise that means the chain has already jumped time. Marcus, a rideshare driver in Atlanta, described the sound as marbles in a blender. By the time he pulled over, the chain had skipped. It bent several valves on impact right in the middle of a busy airport pickup run. The repair bill landed at $6,100. That was more than the car was worth at trade and value. Shops rarely inspect this proactively because there is no dashboard warning prompting the customer to ask. It is invisible until it is catastrophic. That silence works in the shop's favor. A preventive inspection costs almost nothing. Meanwhile, the resulting engine damage pays for a mechanic's vacation or a down payment on a boat. The habit that saves you is listening. Literally, every 30,000 miles, have a mechanic perform a cold start noise check. Ask them to check specifically for chain rattle. It takes 5 minutes and usually costs nothing if bundled with an oil change. Ask them specifically to listen during a cold start, not a warm one. The rattle only shows up in those first few seconds before oil pressure builds. 5 minutes of listening, or $6,100 of bent valves. That is the price of silence on this engine. Now here is where things get more dangerous. The next habit affects the exact part responsible for stopping your car. Skipping it has ended in tragedy for more than one family, not just an expensive repair bill. Number 10, the brake fluid. Nobody checks until it is too late. Brake fluid absorbs moisture over time. This process is called hygroscopic absorption. That moisture lowers the boiling point of the fluid. This sounds harmless until you're descending a mountain pass and your brakes suddenly feel like mush. Priya, an ER nurse in Denver, learned this while driving down a canyon road. This happened after a long overnight shift. Her pedal sank nearly to the floor after repeated braking. She survived by using engine braking to slow down. A mechanic later found her fluid was contaminated with almost 3% water content. This was far past the safe threshold of moisture. Most shops never test brake fluid unless you specifically ask. A fluid flush costs about $90. A full brake system rebuild after fluid failure runs over $1,500. Guess which repair keeps a shop's monthly numbers looking healthier at the end of the quarter? The fix takes 2 years off your worry list, literally. Flush brake fluid every 2 years, regardless of mileage. Ask for a moisture test at every inspection. It is one of the cheapest insurance policies your car offers. Most shops own the little handheld tester already. They simply never bother pulling it out unless a customer asks. $90, or a mountain pass with mushy brakes. That is not a trade-off anyone should gamble on. But brakes are not the only system that quietly betrays you on a hill. The next habit involves an engine mount doing a job most owners do not even know exists. Number 9, the engine mount that silently lets your engine shift. Hydraulic engine mounts on Mercedes vehicles wear out gradually. The symptoms are so subtle, most owners blame road noise instead. A worn mount lets the engine shift under acceleration. This stresses hoses, wiring, and exhaust connections that were never designed to flex that much. Jerome, a delivery driver in Chicago, noticed his Sprinter van vibrating more each month. He kept telling himself it was just an old work van, doing old work van things. 18 months later, that vibration had cracked a coolant hose connector. This caused a slow leak that eventually overheated his engine on a highway shoulder in July. Total repair cost reached $2,900. A simple mount inspection costs almost nothing during a routine service, yet very few shops flag it unless the customer specifically requests a check. Why volunteer information that prevents a $2,900 repair down the line? Staying quiet keeps the future bill firmly on the table. The habit is easy. Every 20,000 miles, have your mechanic physically inspect engine mounts. Look for cracking or excessive movement, not just a visual glance from 3 feet away. A good technician will actually grab the engine and rock it. They will watch for excessive travel while doing this. This is something almost nobody does unless specifically asked. A 5-minute inspection or a summer stranded on the highway shoulder. That is what a lazy glance costs you. Coming up next is a habit involving the one fluid people assume never needs attention. They ignore it until their heater blows out ice-cold air in the dead of winter. Number 8, the coolant swap that turns acidic. Without you knowing, Mercedes coolant is not just water and antifreeze. It contains corrosion inhibitors that break down chemically over time. Once those inhibitors deplete, coolant pH drops from around 9.5 toward 7.2. This crosses directly into corrosive territory that eats aluminum components from the inside. Angela, a teacher in Austin, used whatever coolant was on sale at a parts store. She did this instead of using the manufacturer-specified formula. $5 saved felt like $5 saved. Within 3 years, her water pump housing had corroded so badly it developed a pinhole leak. The repair, including a new water pump and thermostat housing, cost $1,200. Generic coolant is $5 cheaper per gallon. This sounds like savings until you realize it voids the exact chemistry engineered to protect aluminum engine components. Shops rarely warn customers about this because selling the correct coolant earns them almost nothing. They prefer the repair bill that follows the wrong one. Nobody in that waiting room is reading ingredient labels. The habit is simple. Use only manufacturer-specified coolant. Replace it every 4 years or 60,000 miles, whichever comes first. Never mix coolant types either. Different formulas react badly together and can accelerate the exact corrosion you are trying to prevent. $5 saved on cheap coolant, or $1,200 spent on a corroded water pump. That is the actual price of shopping on price alone. Up next at number 7 is a part so small most owners cannot even locate it, yet ignoring it has ended engines that were otherwise in perfect health. Number 7. The PCV valve that chokes your engine. From the inside, the positive crankcase ventilation valve, or PCV valve, regulates pressure inside your engine. On many Mercedes engines, it is a tiny plastic part that clogs with oil sludge over time. Once it is clogged, pressure builds inside. This forces oil past seals it was never meant to touch. Trevor, a construction foreman in Houston, ignored a slight oil smell for months. He assumed it was nothing because his truck cab always smelled a little like diesel anyway. By the time he investigated, oil had been pushed past his valve cover gaskets. It was seeping onto his exhaust manifold and creating a smoke show every time he accelerated. The repair, including gaskets and a new PCV valve, cost $800. That bill could have been $30 if caught early. Shops rarely mention this part because it is buried under the intake manifold. It remains completely invisible during a standard inspection. Nobody profits from mentioning a $30 part that prevents an $800 gasket job. The habit is simple. Have your PCV valve inspected every 30,000 miles. Replace it proactively rather than waiting for symptoms. It is a 5-minute job for anyone who actually knows where to look. This is exactly why so few shops bother looking. $30 now, or $800 in leaking gaskets later. That is the cost of a part smaller than your thumb. Quick engagement question for you. Have you ever had your PCV valve checked? Drop a comment below and let us know. Most owners have never even heard of it. If this is helpful so far, hit that like button now. The next 6 habits get considerably more expensive to ignore. Number 6. The spark plugs that quietly drain your fuel economy and your wallet. Mercedes spark plugs are rated for longer intervals than most people expect. Sometimes they are rated up to 100,000 miles. The problem is that rated for does not mean perfect until that exact number. Plugs degrade gradually over time. A degraded plug forces your engine to run richer, wasting fuel every single mile. Simone, a real estate agent in Miami, noticed her fuel economy dropping over 18 months. She assumed it was just traffic, gas prices, or her own imagination. When she finally replaced her plugs at 110,000 miles, her mechanic showed her the old parts. They were coated in carbon buildup so severe that 2 were misfiring intermittently. Her fuel economy improved by nearly 15% after replacement. Nobody warns you about gradual degradation because there is no dashboard light for slightly worse fuel economy. It is a silent tax paid at every gas station. This quietly funds nothing but wasted fuel month after month. It happens without a single receipt pointing back to the actual cause. The habit is proactive replacement at 70,000 miles. Do this instead of waiting for the manufacturer's maximum interval. It is cheap insurance against a problem you would otherwise never notice. Honestly, a set of quality plugs costs less than a single tank of premium gas. 15% better fuel economy, or 15% of your paycheck burned at the pump for years without knowing why. That is what a $40 set of plugs is actually worth. The next habit sitting at number 5 involves the single most expensive fluid most owners have never even heard of. Skipping it has ended more engines than almost anything on this list. Number 5. The differential fluid. Everyone forgets until their rear. And starts whining. Rear. Differential fluid on Mercedes. Vehicles rarely gets mentioned during routine service, yet it breaks down under heat and friction just like every other fluid in your car. Once it degrades, gears inside the differential grind against each other with less protection. This eventually produces a distinctive whining noise under acceleration. Walter, a retired firefighter in Tampa, drove his E-Class for 11 years without a single differential service. He figured an old fluid was probably fine since nothing sounded wrong. The whining started subtly. Then it grew louder each month until the differential eventually seized completely on a highway on ramp. The replacement differential assembly cost him $3,800. Shops rarely mention differential service because it is not part of a standard maintenance checklist. Most owners have literally never heard the word differential in their life. Ignorance in this case is extremely profitable for whoever eventually replaces that assembly. That replacement bill funds a lot more than just parts. The habit is simple. Service your differential fluid every 50,000 miles. Do this especially if you tow or drive aggressively. Most owners have literally never had this done a single time in the life of their car. It shows the moment that whine starts creeping in. A $90 service or a $3,800 replacement. That is the sound of ignorance. Literally whining under your car. Coming up, habit number 4 involves a part connected directly to your safety. The consequences of ignoring it have proven fatal for other drivers. Number 4, the suspension. Bushings that slowly steal your control. Rubber suspension bushings degrade with age and mileage. As they crack and soften, your car's handling becomes progressively less precise. Most drivers never notice because the change happens so gradually. It occurs over months and years rather than all at once. LaToya, a nurse in Charlotte, described her Mercedes as feeling floaty on the highway. She assumed it was simply an older car quirk that she could just get used to over time. During a routine inspection, her mechanic discovered severely cracked control arm bushings. They had been compromising her steering response for over a year. The repair, including alignment, cost $700. This bill grows dramatically if bushings fail completely and damage surrounding components. Shops rarely proactively inspect bushings because there's no dashboard warning associated with gradual suspension wear. Most customers never think to ask about rubber components they cannot see. They are buried underneath a car they rarely look at from below. The habit is simple. Have suspension bushings visually inspected every 30,000 miles. Do this particularly if your car feels looser than it used to. Push and pull on control arms during inspection rather than just eyeballing them from underneath. Cracks often hide on the side facing away from view. $700 for bushings or thousands more if compromised handling leads to an accident. That is a cost nobody should measure only in dollars. Up next, habit number 3 is one that dealerships really do not want you to know. It directly affects how much they charge you for maintenance you may not even need. Number 3, the maintenance minder. That lies to your face. Mercedes vehicles use a computerized system called maintenance minder. It estimates when service is needed based on driving conditions. The problem is this system is calibrated conservatively in some areas and aggressively in others. It sometimes recommends services you do not need while missing ones you do. Gregory, an accountant in Seattle, trusted his maintenance minder completely for 6 years. He assumed the dashboard alerts covered everything his car needed, just like a spreadsheet formula. When he finally got an independent inspection, his mechanic found several overdue items. He had old cabin filters, degraded brake fluid, and a coolant system that had never once been flushed. This happened despite the dashboard reporting everything as fine. The system exists partly to standardize dealer service recommendations. This conveniently pushes owners toward dealer service appointments rather than independent research. Trusting it blindly means trusting a computer's guess over your own eyes and a second opinion. Computers, unlike experienced mechanics, cannot hear a strange noise or smell burnt fluid. The habit is simple. Use Maintenance Minder as a guideline, never gospel. Cross-reference every alert against the actual owner's manual schedule. Get independent inspections annually regardless of what the dashboard claims. Keep a paper log of every service too. Dashboards reset and forget, but a written record never does. Trusting a dashboard blindly or trusting your own research. That is the difference between a car that lasts and one that quietly falls apart while the dashboard insists everything is fine. Comment below with which habit surprised you the most so far. The final 2 habits are the ones almost nobody follows, and they matter more than anything on this list. Number 2, the battery maintenance that affects every single electronic system on your car. Modern Mercedes vehicles run dozens of computer modules. Every single one depends on stable battery voltage. A weakening battery does not just fail to start your car. It sends inconsistent voltage that can confuse sensitive electronic modules long before the battery fully dies. Nadia, a software engineer in San Jose, experienced random dashboard warning lights for months. They ranged from transmission alerts to airbag warnings, none of which made any logical sense together. 3 different shops could not diagnose it. Eventually, a 4th shop tested her battery and found it was producing unstable voltage under load. This was confusing multiple modules simultaneously. A new battery costing $180 fixed every single warning light instantly. Shops sometimes chase expensive diagnostic paths before checking the cheapest, most obvious component. They do this because diagnostic labor bills far more than a battery ever could. Nadia's diagnostic bills before finding the real problem totaled over $600. None of this would have been necessary if the very first technician had simply grabbed a load tester. The habit is simple. Test your battery's voltage under load every year, especially once it passes the 4-year mark. Replace it proactively rather than waiting for a failure to strand you somewhere inconvenient. A load test takes about 5 minutes and most parts stores run it completely free. $180 for a new battery, or $600 chasing phantom electrical problems that were never really there. That is the cost of skipping the simplest test in the entire shop. And now, the final habit. the one that ties every single other habit together. This is the one habit almost nobody actually follows consistently. Number 1. The single mechanic relationship that outperforms. Every dealership visit. Combined, every habit on this list works best when one person tracks it over years. This should be a mechanic who actually knows your specific car. It beats a rotating cast of dealership technicians seeing your car for the first time at every visit. Consider Harold, a retired teacher in Sacramento. He has used the same independent mechanic for 19 years across 2 different Mercedes vehicles. He never once shopped around for a cheaper quote. That mechanic noticed subtle changes almost instantly. He picked up on a slightly different idle sound and a faint vibration because he had a baseline for comparison. No dealership technician could ever have that. Harold's current E-Class recently crossed 480,000 miles with 0 major repairs. Dealerships profit from rotating technicians and standardized checklists. This scales efficiently across thousands of customers. What gets lost in that efficiency is the intuition a single mechanic builds over years with one specific car. No checklist has ever managed to replicate that on paper. The habit is simple, and honestly, it is the most important one on this entire list. Find one independent mechanic you trust and stick with them for the life of your car. Bring every single car you own to that same person, year after year. They will build the kind of pattern recognition no computer or rotating technician could ever match. A rotating cast of strangers, or one person who knows your engine better than you do. That is the real difference between a car that dies at 150,000 miles and one still running strong past 500,000. Hey, thanks for watching. If you found these Mercedes habits helpful, let us know in the comments below. Want to see which car brands are quietly collapsing this year? Click the video on your left. We'll see you there.